Hi, my name is Carolina, and I am a project coordinator. I would like to begin by telling you a little bit about myself. I am both from California and Arizona. My mother was born in Mexico in the state of Durango, and my father's descendants are said to be from Monterrey, Mexico. My parents cut lettuce for a living, and up until we moved here in 1996, I did not realize we were a minority. So today, I'm very excited to be presenting to you about the Hispanic Latino population in the Northwest Arkansas Cultural Competency Training. Let's begin by learning about our learning objectives. After this training, you should be able to describe demographics of the Hispanic population in the U.S. and Northwest Arkansas, identify cultural characteristics that may influence the health behaviors of the Hispanic population, identify common health beliefs and health risk factors commonly found within the Hispanic communities, and utilize cross-cultural communication skills to appropriately address the health concerns of Hispanic patients. Let's begin by discussing our first learning objective, history and background. And what better way to begin than exciting statistics? Hispanics are the nation's largest ethnic minority. There are approximately 54 million Hispanics living in the United States. This makes up about 17% of the population, and we are projected to reach 31% by 2060. Within the Hispanic community, there are several subgroups. So Hispanic Latino groups in the United States. While Mexicans do make up the majority of the Latino population is quite diverse. Mexicans make up 64% of the population, Puerto Ricans 9.4%, Salvadorians 3.8%, Cubans 3.7%, Dominicans 3.1%, and so forth. So you recall that I mentioned to you that I got here around 1996, and it was right around the beginning of that boom that you see, close to that 1990 portion that you'll see at the beginning of that graph. This graph shows the increase in the Hispanic population in the Northwest Arkansas over the last 25 years. It jumped from 1.1% of the population in 1990 and escalated to 16% of the population in 2010, and it's continually growing. This map shows the percentage of the population in each city that is made up by Hispanic and Latinos in Northwest Arkansas relative to the county and state percentages. As you can see, Springdale and Rogers have the largest population of Hispanic residents at 35 and 31%, but Siloam Springs and Lowell are not far behind with 24 and 20%. Statewide, Hispanics make up 6.9% of Arkansas population. And moving on to background, is that all right? It is important to note that there are a wide range of variability within the Hispanic and Latino population. This population is very diverse. So regional differences, as I mentioned to you earlier, the subgroups within the Hispanic population, but the phrase Hispanic only accounts for those from Spanish-speaking countries. So the phrase Latino includes people from Latin America and areas such as Brazil, where they primarily speak Portuguese. Appearance can also range from very dark to very light. Hispanic Latinos may have very fair complexion, freckles, red hair, blue eyes. Urban and rural, there are quite a bit of differences. Someone from a rural area tends to have greater difficulty getting acclimated to the United States, especially when they move into a city. The food is very different. Back home, we cook everything that we raised or farmed, so it's a lot more home-based than somebody that would be from a place like West Fork. The trips going to the city would be, not even once a month. It would be very prolonged, once a 6 months apart. So it's very it's a big event usually in the family when they do go to the city. While someone who moves from an urban community that moves into a city like Springdale, they have a greater idea of how to buy food, and remember that even currency is different. And then then there's generational differences. A newly arrived immigrant is quite different from an immigrant that has been here for 10 years and so forth. And so first and second and third generation, a first generation can range in many ways based on their immigration status. When you're worried about who knows your personal information, such as your name and your address and the risks it poses for them, they are less inclined to be giving out that information. But those that are from urban and have proper documentation would be a lot more inclined about searching for information and signing up for things to be involved in and to pursue information about how to get help and things of that nature. Second generation are typically more acclimated. They have been in our school system and are often are used by the first generation family members for interpretation and references. They are highly dependent on for sources of information. Third generation tend to be very assimilated, and it's very hard to sometimes it can be hard to tell what kind of background they are from, depending on sometimes it's hard to keep up with the language, and the traditions are harder to keep up with because American tradition becomes our own. And then immigration status. There are several differences in immigration status, such as legal or documented. They may have visas that can range from 1 month, 6 months, or even 10 years. There are also those who do not have any of these, usually because of harsher economical conditions, inhabitable or otherwise, who are and those are the undocumented. Then there are those who are here as refugees here locally. Many are from El Salvador. Socioeconomic differences, the household incomes can range from lower socioeconomic. Those tend to be more like the first generation. They tend to be seeking a better life in this land of opportunity. They tend to have less than the others, but it is not to be assumed, because there are also those who have saved up to get here and that are here for a similar reason of getting a better life, but more opportunity, and have a higher range in the socioeconomic spectrum. Education. Now, since they do come to work and build a better future, education is very important. But many hope to achieve their high school diploma, and seeking a degree in college can seem very unreachable. About 23% of elementary high school students are Hispanic, but only about 7% of college students are Hispanic. So this is quite a struggle with it being access to healthcare and health in 2012. Approximately 30% of Hispanics did not have health insurance. This goes across the board. In the past, insurance in Mexico was often considered to be a scam. Since there are no laws to protect the covered from getting the coverage that they have paid for, it's hard for anybody. There's not a go-to person that you can make sure that the payments that you've made on a monthly basis, or on whatever the payment plans have been based on, you literally have to go hunt down that person that you've been making the payments to, and assume that you're going to be able to locate that money and that they will have it to pay for the damages or the things that are needed to be fixed. So it's very much not there. And then there's not often support, law enforcement to support that. So it's very difficult to get here to the U.S. and say, yeah, I'm going to give this person my money or make payments for insurance, and then assume that it's going to be there when you haven't had that, when that's not the norm from where you're from. Now, also literacy is an issue for, it's very difficult to because education is such an issue at home. There's usually the decision of whether or not, as a child, you're going to either go to work and go ahead and start bringing money to help support the family, or if you're actually going to go to second or third or so forth grade to get your education. And so because it's such a sacrifice, it's very difficult to accommodate. And therefore literacy issues are a lot more noticeable whenever you're trying to sign up for coverage. The first generation, it has to be given in slow increments and at a very slow pace as far as understanding and reading the information. But as even as a English monolingual, it's very hard for us to understand. I mean, who really sits down and reads everything word for word on our insurance information? So with that in mind, if you don't know English and you're already struggling to read in your own language, much less in a second language, so it's quite difficult. So it's very what they'll do is they'll go ahead and depend on that second generation person or that or a certain person of contact that they trust to read that information as much as possible, and then they'll expect them to summarize and usually even ask them to suggest what they should choose, and more than likely base their decision on that. So we talked about the factors that can influence the health of Hispanics. Here are some of the health issues faced by Hispanics. The leading cause of death are similar to that of non-Hispanic whites, except for unintentional injuries, which is 6 for non-Hispanic whites. Diabetes is found in 14% of the population, as opposed to 8% in non-Hispanic white. And cervical cancer rates are twice the rate of non-Hispanic whites. That is attributed to the lower rates of preventative care utilization. Approximately 40% obesity rate among Hispanics over the age of 20, but on a positive note, the rate of an infant mortality is lower than that of non-Hispanic whites. Some of the cultural factors that influence health practices are family, health beliefs, religion, diet, exercise, and language. So it's common to see 3 generations living under the same roof. The rates of Hispanic seniors living in nursing homes is relatively low, 6.4% as of 2005. That those that do are more likely to live in poor quality nursing homes. We don't like to have our elders live in those places. It's not actually a good thing on our end. It's we consider that a bad thing, just because we feel like we can better take care of our elders. We'll know what they need when they need it. We'll be able to give them more of a nurturing care. With the language barriers and the other issues, and we'll talk more about this, but there's like herbal remedies and things that we like to pursue and things of that nature. And so we feel like we can better take care of our family, and we want to give them the best care as possible. While we do realize that you guys have that physicians and the nursing support do have a different type of support, we want to have them with us as much as possible. And age indicates knowledge and experience, and family members look to our elders for advice. So if they are at the nursing home, then we may not be able to get in touch with them when we need to. It's a lot harder to have to take a trip or to know what's going on with them. We want to be able to give them anything they need. And then the needs of the family are more important than the needs of the individual, in the sense that if we are ill, particularly the one that's the lead in the family, they tend to work through it even if they're ill and not take that time off. So in traditional homes, the man is the head of the family and he makes all of the major decisions. So there's a strong sense of paternalism, but female roles are equivalent in regards to importance because the it's because of the solidarity of the family unit depends on their well-being. So women are in charge of raising the children and tending to the home, but they are in essence very selfless. It's with the idea that they will, when they get sick, there's no rest time. The mother cares for the husband, the children, the his mother, his father, and her parents, and so she can't really afford to be ill. Machismo is very common. Machismo is the idea that the man is the ruler of the household, but this isn't a bad thing. It's also it's a he's the protector. He's the one we go to for support, and we look at him as the provider and the one who takes care of us. And so there's good that comes with that because we see him as it's just the structure of the kind of a structure of an organization. So he is seen as very much as the go-to in the extent of any kind of financial just anything that happens, dad knows about it. Dad needs to be involved. Dad takes care of any kind of issue. So he's very much, he works and, provides financially and supports in very many areas. Health beliefs and practices. So Latinos may view illness as a sin, some sort of imbalance or witchcraft. Like in the U.S., there's stigma around surrounding mental illness. So patients with mental health concerns do not like to share their information with relatives or friends and are shy to seek help. In the Latino community, that's often seen because it's not really quite understood. So things like allergies even may be seen as something like not like a mental issue, like you just need to kind of get over it, like it's not something that really exists, like there has to be some kind of cure for that. You can't be dependent on a medication for an extended period of time. So mental illness, and it's dealt with in that same manner. It's just, you're either too weak, you need to be able to handle your situation, you need to take care of that. So but whenever anything like that, the more information given to, the more information provided and the more taught about it will provide more guidance in that sense. So they tend to realize it tends to be less of a stigma. And this is very similar with substance abuse. Hispanics will often try self-medicating or herbal home remedies before seeking professional medical care treatment. So if a patient comes in very sick, make sure you ask what they have been doing and to treat prior to coming to the doctor. I realize that sometimes that treatment is not always unacceptable. Oftentimes they know this too, but if you react in an accusing manner, they will probably just hide it from you. And so that can, pose a problem because of some of the issues that you may know about. Let's talk about some of the methods we might use. So some traditional health practices you may see in the Hispanic and Latino cultures are home remedies. The use of herbal remedies such as garlic, we believe that it is more potent than cholesterol medication. It is commonly used as it is commonly seen as a powerful antibiotic. chamomile is often used as a tea to remove bacteria. It can even be used as a form to cure pink eye. There are many herbs that are commonly used, sometimes a mixture or sometimes just the one herb. We consult with elders, hierberos, sobadores, and curanderos for their knowledge. The hierberos will consult with them for their knowledge in herbs and their remedies. In previous slide, I mentioned witchcraft. One example of this is when someone has tried numerous methods of trying to take care of something. So the person might still be sick, and so what someone, like if a child is still crying and hasn't really stopped crying for whatever reason, and they'll visit a friend and the friend says, hey, your child might have ojo, is what we call it, not the evil eye, but ojo. And so what they'll do is they'll go home and they'll do kind of a seance where they'll elevate an egg over the entire body of the child as it's laying down, and but once it's complete, they'll throw the egg out away from the home. And so that's the process that they'll do. And then another type of home remedy is where they'll get urine from a healthy deemed individual, an individual that's deemed healthy. So if there's somebody that's usually preferably like a child that's if there is a child that's been sick for a period of time, and he doesn't seem to be getting better, months of being sick, then they will seek out the urine of a healthy family member. So going back to the fact that they deem them healthy, sometimes it'll be like an extent of more than 6 months that they haven't been ill, or a year, or just like I said, it just depends on who it is, and so they'll deem that person as healthy, and they'll have that child drink the urine for that extended period of time. They might do this to an elder where they have them do that, and so it just depends on they just trying to pursue the best avenue to try to get them to feel better, to stop being sick all the time. Medications, they may get medications from back home. There are places also locally that provide medications that we're familiar with, because it's what we use back home. So, thinking about language barriers, if you're coming from, if you know how you respond to a cough medicine, and you come to to Springdale and you look at NyQuil, something that you might not see, in Mexico or somewhere else, and so you go to the market in Springdale, and you find a brand that you like and that you know about, then it's much easier for you to just buy that. Of course, there are some medications that are as strong as prescription strength medications. While those are a little harder to acquire, they are cheaper than a consultation, quicker than scheduling an appointment, and the effects tend to be more immediate. So we take the time and look for those places to be able to find that. We also love to share. We share about our culture, our food, and medication. If we have to go to the doctor, and after seeing the effect of the result, we stop taking the medication, why continue taking it? We will share it with our family and friends, and we have saved it just so that that family member doesn't have to make that appointment and take time off of work and risk getting fired or whatever other issues that may cause. So it just it saved him time, money, and the money that I spent on the prescription. So it was I'm deemed his hero per se. So it all goes back to being able to help each other, and how we try to help our family members in our units. And so doctor visits. So insurance is not a normative in Latino culture. Remember, I talked to you about how insurance is a scam in Mexico and many other Latin America. And so in the past, so back in Mexico, if my family gets sick to the point to where one of us needs to visit the doctor, there are no appointments. You walk into this huge building called El Seguro. It's a hospital, and you get checked in. So let's say I'm the one that's sick. I get in the taxi, or I get on the bus, or I walk with my 3 kids and my grandmother. No, my mother and my husband, and we all get into this car, this taxi, and we drive to this place. I get checked in. I'm the only one that checked in. I arrived. I did not schedule an appointment. We sit in the waiting room for 3 or 4 hours, and then when the doctor sees me, I tell him what's wrong with me. I tell him my kids haven't had shots. He gives my kids shots. He sees my husband had, something he wanted to be seen for. He goes ahead and gives him a prescription. My mother needed some kind of ointment, gives her an ointment. We walk out of there with prescription medication, shots. Everybody was seen. Everybody was taken care of. But I was the only one that was checked in. There was no insurance card. There was no appointment. There was, it was all very simple and taken care of. So we all leave there completely taken care of. So multiple family members are seen in the one consultation visit. So it's quite different than what you would see here. And also going back to the idea that we do take care of each other very much so. Even the youngest one will, go get a cup of water, or bring the medication bottle, anything like that. So that's why so many of us will go in packs to the clinic, because we want to know what's going on and piece what the doctor says together, and try to figure everything out. And so moving on to religion. First generation are more likely to be Roman Catholics, though there are a growing number of Protestants. In some respects, we can be very conservative. The priest or pastor, etc., has great influence on the congregation. If he promotes preventative care or healthy lifestyles or seeing the doctor, then the churchgoers are more likely to seek these things. Physical activity. Start off by considering whether patient is immigrant, acculturated, Hispanic, Latino, or U.S. born. Men and women in first generation commonly view work as exercise. So in this area, many work in the chicken and other factories, in the poultry industries and other factories. They stand all day. They lift equipment at the farm or on the construction site. So working out before or after work is not something you do. I mean, who wants to get to work already tired? On the weekend, many of those families will go to the mall and walk as a form of exercise while they shop at the local mall. So we prefer to go to the mall on Sundays. The second and third generations will be more inclined to walk at a park, or even possibly get a membership at a local gym. So there's a bit of an issue, because it starts to go in a different direction, because women, exercise is often viewed as a challenge among traditional in the Hispanic women. It is almost selfish. We have too much work at home to make time for exercise. Our busy schedules and the work at home keeps us active enough. So there is also a bit of stigma in the Hispanic culture. When a woman pays too much attention to her appearance, she may be viewed as a bad mother or unfaithful wife. Who is she getting pretty for, and where does she go? Who is she seeing? Plumpness and curves are also seen as ideal. The kid-bearing hips is perceived as strong enough to handle her wifely duties, and this also works vice versa. The husband, how is he supposed to be? Remember, we're from a machista, and we're from a very machismo society where he's strong. He has to be of a strong and a protector and such. So if he's of a more frail and thin nature, then how is he going to be able to do that? And so thinness may be perceived as a problem. Petite women may be viewed as sick or unable to bear children. So a wife that's tiny may have a tiny, frail, and unhealthy child. But this also So, I explained to you how that applies also to the men, and not being able to be strong enough and able as they to protect for and provide for their family. So there's a greater acculturation that tends to be associated with less stigma surrounding exercise. Moving on to diet and nutrition. So wide variations based on region. So while there are wide variations based on regions and generations, some common dietary habits within the Hispanic population in Northwest Arkansas are that food is often fried. We like fried so much that we refry it, and not just in oil. We prefer manteca, which is pork fat. When we like to eat healthier, we'll commonly switch to shortening because it has vegetable in the title, so that has to be healthier. And from there, we will merge onto other things. But overall, our diet is high in salt, fat, and sugar content. So Mexican Americans are the second largest consumer of sugar drinks in the U.S. This may be related to the fact that we consider Cokes to be digestive aid. With all the fatty foods we eat, and that film that builds up at the roof of your mouth whenever you eat that super high in fat uh, meal, the Coke will, in a sense, break it down, and so we tend to lean more towards the Coke drink to help alleviate that issue. So we definitely look to it as a digestive aid. And Coke is so popular in Mexico that it's delivered to the homes directly by the distributor. And common staples in Mexican cuisine are meat, rice, beans, tomatoes, onions, and jalapenos. Dietary practices. For traditional or first generation families, the kids will eat first, but we do not approve of throwing food away, so we will feed them things that are easy for them to eat, like rice, beans, and sopita, which are fried pasta boiled in a tomato bouillon. Traditionally, you won't force vegetables on the children because you don't want to throw that food away that they've handled and won't eat. Fathers will eat next after the mother has laid everything out for him. Remember that this is very much a male-dominated society, so the husband comes to the table again when everything has been laid out. Mother will the mom will eat last, but it's ideal because she gets to sit down and peacefully eat without having to get up to heat tortillas or cater to everyone's needs. So it's kind of her peaceful time to just relax and enjoy her meal. In language, determine whether the patient speaks enough language to comprehend, interpret needed, if an interpreter is needed or preferred. Legal requirement to provide language services if the patient doesn't speak enough English. Provide patient with written materials in English or in Spanish. Any written material is ideal because even if we aren't proficient in English, they will have someone at home who can read it for them. So even if in my house I don't have someone that speaks English and you've given me something in English that has some kind of instructions, if you tell me or at least make sure that I understand that this information is important, I will seek someone out in my community that I trust that will read it and summarize it and explain it to me so that I can make sure to follow or make the intent to do so, the directions that are on that page. We know that the use of family members as interpreters is not ideal for several reasons. There are male and female roles. A male is not cannot discuss certain body parts to the female, and there's also lack of accuracy of translation that's involved, especially in medical terminology. It takes some practice to be able to translate some of these terms, and they may not be knowledgeable in that area. Privacy assurance with using a family member. Unfortunately, there's no way of securing that they will not share this information with anyone else. And depending on who is present and the information shared, discussing health matters among family members may cause problems in the home. Community health workers. Now that we've talked about some of the factors that can impact the health of the Hispanic or Latino population, I want to take a moment to talk about one option to help bridge the gap between undeserved communities and the healthcare system. Community health workers, otherwise known as lay educators, peer educators, patient navigators, and many other definitions, have been shown to be effective in chronic disease prevention and treatment, maternal and child health, infectious disease prevention, and management programs. CHWs are part of the community they serve and are able to deliver culturally appropriate messages and instruct and act as a source of cultural knowledge for providers. In the following case study, a female Hispanic patient is referred by her physician to get a mammogram. She doesn't speak English and so they ask her son to interpret for her. When her son explains the procedure to his mother, it appears that he is translating accurately. His mother signs the English consent form and returns 3 days later for the mammogram. But when the tech begins to prepare the Hispanic mother for the scan, she appears uncomfortable and very upset and leaves the clinic without having the mammogram. Please take a moment to think about what may have happened. Since it's inappropriate for men to discuss the female anatomy, especially in respect to those in parental role, the embarrassed son told her that she would be getting a chest x-ray. She hadn't heard of a mammogram. She was not prepared for such an intimate process and was unwilling to undergo the procedure. So this means that even speaking the same language is not always sufficient. Cultural rules often dictate who can discuss what with whom. In general, it's best to use a same-sex interpreter when translating matters of sexual or private nature. Considerations for providers and staff. When using an interpreter, consider appropriateness of interpreter. It is better to use female interpreter for female patient and male interpreter for male patient. Prior to the conversation with the patient, explain to the interpreter what information you are trying to convey and obtain. Start the conversation by greeting the patient first and speak directly to the patient. Rather than to interpreter, it's helpful to position the interpreter off to the side and behind the patient. Speak in first person directly to the patient. For example, tell me what brings you in today, instead of asking her what brought her in today. Pay attention to the patient's body language. It can tell you a lot. Always remember, nodding does not necessarily tell you comprehension or agreement. And ask one question at a time, always waiting for the response. Along with asking one question at a time, always allow the interpreter to finish interpreting. Do not interrupt. Pause often, speak at an even pace, and allow interpreter time to interpret. Don't use double negatives. This is confusing even in English and even more so in translation. Be aware of gender differences. This goes back to determining the appropriateness of the interpreter. Ask the interpreter's opinion of whether or not the patient seems to understand the relayed information, or if there may be any cultural misunderstandings. Be aware it takes longer to translate into Marshallese, so consider scheduling more time. General considerations. The use of non-trained, unofficial interpreters such as janitors, food service workers, and housekeepers is not ideal for multiple reasons. Accuracy of interpretation is questionable. So, because physicians are held at a very high prestige in the Hispanic community, when a janitor is being used for interpretation, this may cause an issue as far as the formality that is, and the level of respect that is given to the patient. So take that into account whenever you're using anybody in any unofficial interpreter. Patients may feel uncomfortable with having non-medical personnel be a part of the conversation about health. Patients see lack of use of interpreters as an indication that the organization may not care. Avoid addressing person by first name unless given permission to do so. Greet with appropriate suffix. So if it's male, then señor before their last name, and then señora before, if it's a female, before their last name, and then señorita if it's an unmarried female. Because of familial roles, it is common that multiple family members will be consulted when making medical decisions. The patient should be asked whether or not this is acceptable. So if a medical physician has given a prescription for cholesterol medication, they will often go home and check with the family, and and because we do take care of each other as a family unit, then we will consult with each other and see if this the reactions they may be having, and how that works for them as a family, what kind of reaction they have, and if it's something that they want to make sure that is best, it's a good fit for that person. If the family must be asked to leave the room, make sure it is explained as to why. Because we do come in as a group, simple explanation as whether there's not enough room, or we'll make sure to take care of her or him. And if you please don't mind waiting in the waiting area, we will have her come back out. We will escort her out to the lobby as soon as that the consultation is over. Do not use a family member as interpreter unless requested by the patient, and make sure not to ask them that in front of the other family members if for some reason they want to use somebody that they don't feel comfortable with. Nodding may be nothing more than a polite gesture, so it does not imply understanding. So they may be embarrassed to let you know that they don't understand, and they may not want to bother the provider with petty questions. Avoid negativity, rolling your eyes, or the tone of voice, your facial expressions. Remember that these are the only cues that someone has if they don't speak the same language as you. Medication instructions. Give verbal instructions on the important points. Repeat those important points, and use an interpreter if there is a doubt regarding patient's comprehension. Remember that because we do like to share, if you want us to take a prescription for that whole period of time, make sure to explain why it's important to take it for further than the extent of seeing the improvement of our health. So just explain why it's beneficial, or why that is, and more than likely you will see because of the higher prestige that we do hold physicians at, we will often take it for that designated time period. And then ask about herbal and prescription medications that we might have taken. Like I said again, it all has to go back to the way you react to it. While we understand that it's frowned upon, we will go ahead and tell you everything that we've taken, and how that relates. And that way you have a better understanding of what we'll do, and it'll also promote being able to go to you next time that we have any kind of issues, and not feeling like we can't go there or anywhere for care. Preventative care, this is often a very unfamiliar concept, because of remember going back to the idea of the seguro will only go if we have an ailment. The problem visits are an excellent time to discuss wellness visits, explain that while it's unrelated to the problem visit, it is a good thing to start doing. Related to cooking, how you have to prepare the food and adding the right ingredients, and how that relates to a good end. In summary, not all Hispanics are the same. Consider the country of origin, rural versus urban, first, second, and third generation versus new immigrant, socioeconomic status and education level. The Hispanic population in Northwest Arkansas has boomed in the last 25 years and is continuing to grow. The prevalence of diabetes and other chronic illnesses, such as stroke and heart disease, are very high. Family plays a significant role in health. Include when appropriate. Consider culture when making recommendations. May need to negotiate with patient and use certified interpreters. This reduces miscommunication. It also improves the quality of care and health outcomes. It gains the trust of the patient. And community health workers serve as a linkage between the Hispanic and Latino communities and the healthcare system. Providing effective care requires culturally appropriate communication, respect for the patient and his or her culture. Patients, you will need to spend extra time with these patients, so having set some time extra for those types of appointments is probably a good idea. Having some understanding of the patient's culture will help, even if that just means understanding or recognizing that there is a difference, and being willing to learn about and try to understand the culture. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. These are our references. Have a great day.